Here I am.
You got it, huh?
The man is setting up, and I am watching. The only way I could help him is if he needed me to quote Mark 16, verse 16.
Hello, Brother Ted.
Good morning. How are you?
I am good today,
Wonderful.
and I'm really glad that we finally got an opportunity to visit, to talk.
I'm happy to have you here. And
Very nice place you got here. Full of family memories, I see.
yeah, I like it here. My son lives right next door.
Okay.
I don't have to mow the yard and rake leaves and all of that. So I love it being here.
So I'm here with Ted Hook Knight. What's the hook?
I played basketball
Ah.
long time ago, and some people call me Hook because I shot a hook shot.
Okay.
So it has stuck all
It's
these
stuck.
years. Yeah.
Those who might be interested, Brother Ted has a Facebook page, and that's his moniker on Facebook, Ted Hook Knight. So every time I see a post of wisdom, whether it be serious or humorous, I say, there's Ted Hook Knight. He's sounding off again.
That's right. I love Facebook. People tell me sometimes, you need to get off of Facebook. But I love Facebook. Try to do a little good with it.
It can be a way to reach a lot of people.
I have almost 5,000 friends, 4,900 and some friends, and a lot of people, followers from a lot of places in the world. And so I try to use Facebook to do good.
You're talking about a lot of friends from over the world. You just recently got back from something pretty significant.
Well, I made my second trip this year to Romania. Is that what you're talking about?
To Romania.
I've been going to Romania for 31 years, teaching the gospel, trying to help people humanitarian needs, and I love going to Romania.
I hope time will allow us to get into some very specific stories about that. I love to hear stories. It piques my interest, especially when people in other parts of the world outside of our culture, how they react to the gospel. For some reason, we feel like we've got the patent on.
Yeah, that's right.
But people have come to the conclusion that Jesus is Lord all over the world. You've also served as a preacher, I'm sure.
Yes, for 66 years.
For 66 years.
I've been what we call a full-time preacher, which means I've been supported by the church.
The purpose of these candid interviews that I've been doing recently is to discover and kind of explain how people became who they are. There's a process that is involved in that. A lot of young people are trying to answer that question for themselves, who am I?
That's right.
And why am I here? Ted, we'll get to know Ted the preacher. I would like to get to know Ted the young man. So we can go way back. There's a place that a lot of people are familiar with, and they've never been there.
Herman Junction. I was born in the little town of Bay, northeast Arkansas. But when I was 7, we had already moved about 3 times after I was born. And my dad built a house at Herman Junction. And we moved there when I was 7 years old. And I've been a lot of places. I've been living in Conway. In 2 more weeks, it will be 50 years.
50 years.
But Herman Junction is home. It always will be home. I love to go there. That basically is where my life started. at Herman Junction, in the middle of cotton fields. Our house was surrounded by cotton fields.
You found your way out into those fields a time or two.
Yeah, I found my way out of the cotton fields. It makes my back hurt to just talk about it, but it was a wonderful life. A few years ago, people talked about people of white color never did have to work very hard back 100 years ago, and talked about others having to pick cotton. Well, I had to pick cotton too. And when you think about what cotton does in this world, it's an amazing thing. So I have great memories of picking cotton and being associated with a lot of wonderful people in the cotton patches.
So you know what the old saying, "We're getting in the short rows now," means.
That's right. That's right.
You know, Ted, I was raised in southeast Montana, and there was a place we lived that brings about those kinds of memories, that kind of response. We lived 40 miles up a gravel road from Bottis, Montana, place that was identified as Moorhead. And because families remained in that area, the county was obligated to put a teacher out there. So we had basically a private tutor.
I'll say.
One-room country schoolhouse, no electricity. But we did have a hot lunch program. We could put a can of soup on the old pot-bellied stove, and at lunchtime it would be warm. We could have hot soup.
Well, Herman Junction had a school, but it had already gone when we moved there. But I have a picture of it many, many years ago. And we had a little bitty store and a cotton gin and a hotel. It wasn't a hotel when I lived there, but it had been. Big white house. And the railroad ran right down the road in front of our house. And at one time, the railroad had a little spur or junction, and the railroad came right through our yard before we moved there to serve the stave mill and cotton gin.
So that hence the name Herman Junction.
That's right.
Your dad took your family to that area and set up. What was his background?
My dad worked on the railroad.
Okay.
And he worked hard. He said it was the coldest job on earth in the wintertime and the hottest in the summertime. He stopped working on the railroad and became a carpenter. We sharecropped some cotton fields, and then he worked on the railroad or later in carpentry work, and we continued to pick cotton.
So he employed you kids to get out there and drag those long sacks.
That's right. And even in the night, after we got through in the cotton fields and gathered around the supper table, if I did not pick as much that day as he thought I should, he would say, "Boy, you better get your head in them stalks tomorrow," which meant you better stay bent over instead of standing up watching the cars go down the road. And there was 8 of us, kids. Each one was the day's work, the amount of cotton picked. he went over that and commended us when we did well and told us we needed to do better the next day if we didn't.
Those are the kind of things that kept this country going.
That's true.
We did something similar. From season to season, we'd do contract haying, and we'd put up hay for neighbors.
Yeah.
Dad would put us boys out in the field there, and we'd work. I wasn't old enough to drive to town, but I could drive that tractor.
Yeah. Well, I worked in hay some too. And if there was anything harder than picking cotton, it was stacking hay. Yeah.
Let me put it this way. That rural county in southeast Montana, we had the toughest wrestling team in the state.
I would imagine so.
Them boys was out there all summer throwing hay bales.
Oh, man. Yeah. But we didn't have a chance to get into any meanness that we needed to stay out of.
Well, I found a way, unfortunately.
Oh, you did?
That's another story. This ain't about me. This is about Ted.
Well, I guess I got in my share of mischievousness, but...
You had something that a lot of people don't. My dad was an honorable man. He worked hard. He struggled through. He definitely had the work ethic, and he wanted to do good. But he didn't have anybody really to help him understand how. And we didn't grow up religious. How did you come to understand God?
My mother was a Christian. I think she was baptized at age 16 at Enola.
At Enola.
My mother grew up at Enola, and my grandfather was a preacher, and he and one other man established the church or planted the church at Enola.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. My mother grew up there, and there was a man named Elijah D. Smith that lived in Enola. His wife was Molly, and they moved to Bay and set up a store. And then my mother's brother, my mother was an orphan after age 12. She lived with her brother and sister-in-law, and they went with the Smiths to Bay to pick cotton.
Oh, okay.
And so my mother met my dad there, and in 1928 they got married in Edie and Aunt Molly's store. Anyway, my grandfather was a preacher. My mother would have been if the Lord had let women preach. I have two older brothers that were preachers.
I bet she was a teacher, wasn't she?
Yes, she was an excellent teacher. Studied her Bible constantly. Taught us all the time. My dad was baptized in 1932.
Okay.
So I was brought up in a Christian home. All my siblings were Christians, are Christians. I only have a brother and sister left. I had four older brothers, so I was the fifth boy. And my wife used to say that my mother probably wanted to sit me in a trash can for being a boy. She wanted a girl, but she didn't. She got her girl next, right after me. But my mother was a strong, strong Christian. That came first.
Like young Timothy's mother.
They had a lot in common. On Saturdays, she made sure that we had our lessons for Bible study the next day. That came before any activities out in the yard and so forth. We had to get our Bible lessons. She was a strong Christian, and after my dad was baptized, he became a very strong Christian too. We were brought up in the Lord, as people say.
Well, I came to the church much later. I was a young man or had already made some significant mistakes. I always wondered what would have happened had I been guided. But there's another blessing that I had that I didn't come to understand until much later. God helped me understand.
Yeah.
My Bible reading gave me the knowledge I needed to understand. And I didn't have anyone to help me misunderstand. And there's a lot of people out there who are dead set on helping people misunderstand the gospel.
That is true. There are advantages of being raised in the church as we talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes it's easy to take for granted. I've heard this my whole life and so forth. And let meaning slip away from us. That somebody like you learned the gospel at a later time and came to it yourself. And it became a treasure to you, maybe more than a treasure, that somebody like me, I grew up maybe not realizing what a treasure it was.
I know you've come to understand it for what it is. And the fact that I've known you ever since I came to the church at Hagen.
Yeah.
That's been 25 years, at least. I know that we have participated in helping you with your work here and overseas.
Yes.
And so I am delighted to have that experience. But I've also had other experiences, and I was involved in a different church. And I really didn't understand what it was when I first got involved. They had Church of Christ over the door. And they did a lot of the things that I'd kind of come to expect if I went to visit a church. Also, they spent a lot of time in Bible class proving why they were the only ones that were right.
Mm-hmm.
And all the other churches in the area had fallen away. So I began looking around for another church to go to. I went, okay, these folks, they have been sidetracked somehow. There was no love in their message. They weren't really there to spread the gospel. They were there to affirm to themselves the things that they believed.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I started looking around at other churches, and the leadership of that congregation figured out what I was doing, and they disfellowshipped me.
Oh.
For that.
My.
And it kind of broke my heart because up to that point, I was really, like you say, treasuring the gospel. I wanted to tell everybody I knew. I had finally figured out what obeying the gospel meant.
I can't imagine having that experience and remaining with the Church of Christ where you are today.
Well, my commitment is to Christ.
Amen.
And my delight is in his church.
Amen again.
And it's easily identifiable.
That's right.
When you look into your New Testament, you can see the attributes that it has.
That's right.
And you can figure out fairly quickly whether or not you're with a group that has those attributes. If you listen for his voice, Jesus says, my sheep know my voice and they will flee from another.
That's right.
So, but you have to be taught by Jesus in order to understand that. See,
that's true.
You've got a teacher. The Bible says we're taught by God. Well, we are when we immerse ourselves into his word and let it
that's right.
into our hearts. And now we're guided by the Spirit. And we can see that. Well, that did break my heart. The broad sweep of brotherhood, the circle of fellowship that you can draw, probably needs to narrow.
Yeah.
So I began to be I'm saying it may have even made me a little cynical, but it did not stop me from wanting to live a life pleasing to God.
I just cannot imagine going through that and remaining true to the gospel and telling the story of Jesus. I believe that's our greatest challenge, is to tell the story of Jesus.
And I agree with you. I agree with you. And I know I've kind of turned that around, made it a little bit more about me, but I don't want to do that because young Ted was taught well by his mama.
That is true.
Not only could she make cat head biscuits, she could teach her children to love God.
That is true.
And obviously, her example led her husband to obey the gospel.
That's
She
true.
said they were married and then he obeyed the gospel.
That's right. He became a deacon in the church and a great song leader. And
that's where you got your beautiful tenor voice from.
My dad was a great song leader, and he taught his kids to sing, and we loved it.
Young Ted, in that environment, he grows up. He understands the gospel from a young age. How old were you when you obeyed the gospel?
12.
12 years old. How long was it after you obeyed the gospel that you began participating in worship services?
I'll never forget the Sunday after I was baptized. I always sat on the front row. The guy passing the communion trays just walked on by me. And of course, he may not have known that I had been baptized during the week, or it was just out of habit or something, but he passed me by. And I remember the disappointment. And of course, they brought it back, and I did participate. It wasn't long until I began leading prayers, leading some singing. Our preacher had a boys' training class on Monday nights.
Okay.
It was wonderful, and I wish churches had it today for their young boys. One Sunday morning, I was 12 years old. And one of the elders came to me after service Sunday morning and said, "Would you speak to all of the adults tonight?" Tonight. And I said, yes, not knowing what I was saying. But my mom and I spent all afternoon gathering material, studying the scriptures on the importance of sound doctrine.
How about that?
We wrote it out on 4 sheets of paper on each side. And I got up that night and I read the front side of each sheet. It could not have made any sense. But that was my first time to speak.
And I bet you got some encouragement. People say, good job, Ted. Good job, Ted.
I got a lot of encouragement, and I continued to do that. And people ask me, how long have you preached? And I say 66 years, because that's the time I guess you'd say officially started, the church started supporting me. But really, from ages 12 to 19, I did a lot of preaching in there. When I was at Harding, I would go home on the weekend and preach at a little congregation called Walnut Grove out of the country.
So how old are you now, Ted? How old are you now?
How old am I now? Right now, I'm 85.
85.
But 4 days from now, I'll be 86.
86.
Next Sunday, be number 86. So I've been preaching really 70 years, but that makes no difference, really.
85 years, and you just got back from doing 2 weeks or 3 weeks in Romania?
In Romania, yeah, twice. I went in July and went back in October.
I know the brethren over there love it when you come.
They do. In fact, on that table behind us, there are a couple of little plaques that they gave me when I was there this past time. Each time I go, we all think it's my last time, so we hug and cry and all of that when I leave, and then I go back again. And so people ask me now, are you going back? I say that's up to the Lord. Come next spring, if the Lord keeps me going, and I'll go back. If not, I'll send somebody. I've got my son
Yes.
is working with me.
I've met Marty a couple of times, but I'm really looking for the opportunity to get to know him a little better.
He will come with me when I come to Higdon next time.
Yeah.
He goes with me a lot now, and he gives the report on our work during the Bible class hour, and then I preach. So he's getting to meet a lot of people, he and his wife.
Okay, young Ted has obeyed the gospel, and he started preaching, and he's helping the family in significant ways. What year was it when you were baptized?
1951.
1951. Okay.
It may have been 52. I believe it was the summer of 52.
So you were a young adult, the generation after World War II.
That's right. And then Korea started.
Right.
Shortly after.
All those soldiers so happy to make it back alive and re-engage in their lives and the American dreams and get married and having babies at a phenomenal rate.
Yeah, yeah.
And then Brother Ted grows up and comes and encounters something else at Herman Junction.
That is true. That is true.
That kind of turned your head around.
You're talking about my lady.
I'm going to let you say it.
Well, we met when I was 7 and she was 5.
Okay.
I tell the story. Recently, I was asked to speak at the Levy Church, my home church in North Little Rock, about our journey with Alzheimer's. And so I went back to the beginning. And I was born in Bay. And when the Lord saw me, he said, that little guy's going to need a lot of help. 22 months later, my lady was born in Caraway, just out of Caraway in the country. And when the Lord saw her, he said, that's that help that little boy needs over at Bay. 3 years later, her father, who was a sharecropper, moved his family to Bay, where I was. Our mothers met, became best friends. My mother taught her mother the gospel. She became a Christian. Our families grew up together. One Sunday evening, she came home with my sister from the morning service, spend the afternoon. And we spent the afternoon together. We got in Dad's car to go to service that night. She sat between me and my sister. And somehow her hand got in my hand.
Oh, somehow.
And I thought, she may be mine. A couple of years later, we were having a teenage party after service on Sunday night. We didn't have youth directors and all of these formal things. We had about 200 youth directors, and we called them Mom and Dad. And we were at one of those. And we played a game called Spin the Bottle. And I spun that bottle, and it was pointing directly at her. So we got to take a little walk down the old dirt road, come back. On the way back, I kissed her. And then I said, I know she's mine.
Yeah.
So, a few years later, we were married, 1958. July 24.
I was born in 1957, so
You were 1 year old.
just 1 year old.
Yeah. We were married for 64 years and 96 days.
It may not come as a surprise to you, but you would come to Higdon to visit, and I liked you, but I loved your wife.
I'm glad. Most people did, I guess.
Barbara, she was such a joy.
Yeah.
To be around. I'm sure there are friends of ours, mutual friends, that will concur to that fact that
Yeah.
Barbara was such a delightful person, beautiful, and so easy to be around.
I used to tell her for 34 years, the last 34 years, we did mission work and full-time evangelism, traveled all the time. And I would often tell her that these people are not interested in me coming to preach in a meeting. They're interested in you coming.
The dynamic that you two shared, that is powerful. And I think this is something that it's rare, but it's possible.
Yes, it is.
When a husband and wife treat each other the way that God intends. And the power, I mean, you as a couple were far more powerful than either one of you individually. The source of the power for a family is the husband and wife.
We lived 39 years across town here. And not long ago, the people that lived in that house now, the lady called me. Well, she sent me a picture on a text.
Okay.
And said, we were changing the carpet in one of the bedrooms, and we found this under the carpet, and it was a card. It had a nice message in it, and she said, you might like it. So I went over and got it. And it was a birthday card she gave me in 1998. And she had written in it that she believed that God gave us to each other. And I believe that very much, as I said earlier. I really believe God put us together because He knew we needed each other.
I have met significant people that have influenced my life for good. And I say, well, God knew I needed that. And let me ask you a question.
All right.
Why is it people are resistant to acknowledge God in that way?
People fight God's leadership because we pride ourselves in saying we're in charge. No, God is in charge. Not just when we want Him to be. God is in charge all the time. God was in charge when my lady lay in the hospital bed right over there and took her last breath. And it was the hardest thing that I've ever had to face. And people say, well, God must not have been in charge. Yes, He was. Yes, He was. He was blessing her and taking her home. Well, people say to me sometimes, why did God take your lady away from you? And God didn't do that.
Mm-mm.
Disease did it. And who brought on the disease? Satan. So God is in charge, and it's sometimes hard for us to relinquish our chargeship, if there is such a word, to Him.
Thank you.
I really believe that. I have always believed that. As I said, when I was born and she was born, he said, "There's the match." And we both believed that.
And lived it and demonstrated it.
Well, we tried. We used to talk about that when we passed, on our tombstone, we wanted the two words, "We tried."
Okay.
We tried. That's all.
Young Ted and his soulmate, growing up together, stole a kiss.
Yes, I did.
No, baby.
I sure did. Across the railroad tracks in Herman Junction.
And then God brought you together, husband and wife, and you began having your young family. Now, were you preaching full time by then?
Yes.
Yeah.
4 years after we were married, we had Marty. We lost 2 babies before we had him. And then 4 years later, we had Kathy. I started preaching full time in Michigan City, Indiana.
Okay.
66 and some months years ago. And I've done that ever since. And when our 2 babies were born, my lady used to say she thought she was the only woman on earth that had a boy and a girl. Not 2 boys or 2 girls, but a boy and a girl. She was so happy with those 2.
We've kind of gotten to know you a little bit. You were involved in your first full-time preaching gig in Indiana.
Michigan City, Indiana.
You preached for a while, but that was a precursor. That was a prelude to what I know you as now, as a evangelist, a missionary.
Yes.
Where was that transition made, and why?
Well, I always wanted to preach. I felt like I was not cut out to print bulletins and go to business meetings and elders and deacons meetings and all of this stuff. I wanted to preach. When I went to Harding, I went to see Dean Tucker, Locke Tucker, and I said, I want to take every Bible class. I wasn't interested in physical science and all of this. I wanted all of the Bible classes I could take. And of course, he told me that I needed to take the other classes and so forth. But then when I started preaching, I wanted to preach, not because it was a job, but because it was I don't like to compare myself to Jeremiah, but he had a fire in his bones. And
Right.
that's what I wanted to do. And so 59 years ago, almost 60, I was preaching at the Levy Church in North Little Rock. And the elders and I were just visiting one Sunday afternoon and talking, no official meeting. And I was sharing with them what I would like to do someday. I would stay at Levy, but I would go into full-time evangelism and mission work. They would hire another preacher for the pulpit. So that's where we are.
Okay.
34 years we've been doing this under the oversight of the elders at Levy.
But Romania at that time was under the
Communist.
So how did you manage to get in there? And when did that come about? Was that after the fall of the wall, or was
Yes, it was after the fall. Bill McDonough, who is a missionary all over the world, he's right now. I know he's in his late 80s, and he's right now in Vienna, Austria. spent his life in missions. Harvey Starling was a dear friend of mine and is now. And we were in gospel meetings in the same area up in northeast Arkansas,
Okay.
in different places. One afternoon we were riding around and he said, you need to go to Romania with me. That's the last place in the world I wanted to go because you have to get on an airplane.
Oh, okay.
So forth. I said, I can't go. I asked him the date and he gave it. And I said, I can't go that week because I've got a meeting scheduled. And I should have been quiet, but I wasn't. I said, if it was another date, I would go. Well, a couple of weeks later, he called and said, we've changed the date. So I told him I'd go. And so I meant to go one time, and that be all. But I went and we fell in love with the people in Romania. Carol Seitz, your old friend, mine. Before I went, we were sitting at a table eating. Carol had there's a couple of people between us, and I was telling about going to Romania. I'm about to go to Romania. And how I really didn't much want to go. But Carol said, it will change your life.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, I've been a lot of places. I've done a lot of things. Nothing's changing my life all that much. Brother Carol was right. It changed my life. We fell in love with Romania. And this is my 31st year to go, and my lady went as long as she could.
This is such a treasure that we are recording. When that little camera over there gave up the ghost, it got me nervous. They wanted to make sure we were still catching this. But I love Brother Carol Seitz.
Yeah.
We shared quite a bit of time together, and I would have loved to do a interview like this with him.
Yeah.
Here is a bit of trivia. Maybe you know, maybe you didn't. For about 10 years at Higdon, Brother Carroll was the adult Bible class teacher. Brother Carroll also was one of the most called on evangelists in the Brethren. And people wanted him to come and do special meetings for them.
Yeah.
So he'd be gone 3 weeks out of the month, probably. I would take over his class. So I wasn't really the official Bible class teacher, but I taught the adult class for Carol for about 10 years while he was out doing stuff like that.
I knew, I'd known Carol since 1966. Carol and Loretta, Sarah. We spent time together when we both preached in the Little Rock area. And I knew he always wanted to do what I always wanted to do. And as time went by, he got to do that work. He spent a lot of time in a lot of meetings.
Yeah.
All over the country.
Brought a lot of people to Christ.
That's right.
So there is a calling that we have. And you felt it in your bones.
That's all I felt is I want to preach. That's it.
There's a young person out there watching this. There are probably a lot of old folks with, silver hair, and if they got a beard, it's probably sparkly. But there's some young people out there with a question in their mind, a question on their heart. How do I know whether this fire in me to do this or that is from God?
I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I didn't know if I could. I didn't know how to go about it. I just knew what I wanted to do, and I knew what When the Lord said, go preach the gospel to the world, He's telling me to do that. And the whole world is the place it needs to be done. And I'm a little, very small part of that world, but I've got some part to play.
We never know how far the seed we toss goes us.
That's right.
But God does. And I'm convinced because of the seeds you tossed over there in Romania, the church is bigger and it has expanded. There are Christians out there that you have taught who have taught Christians. That's the way the gospel expands. That's the way the church propagates. Teach to faithful men, we're told, so that they can teach others.
That's right. This last trip, just 6 weeks ago, I did something I wanted to do for many years. For 12 years, when we started the work in Romania, we worked in the southern part of the Romania with 7 congregations that we established. And then we moved up into the north part of Romania. And we've been up there now since 2007. So I wanted to go back and retrace myself. And that's what I did a few weeks ago. We went to the city of Pitești, the first congregation we established. And then we went to Craiova, and all of those 7 congregations. And then we worked our way back up to where our work is now. So I went back to Pitești, and the backbone of the church, the strongest people in the church, were in my ladies' children's Bible class. And this is absolutely, like Paul said once, I'm not lying. One of the young men had a sister that was 4 years old, and he would come to services, and he would have that little girl in his hand. Oh, we just admired him, and the little girl was in my ladies' children's class. Had lunch with both of them a few days ago. He is now 46. She is 31. Well, the day we were in Pitești, we had to wait after services to have lunch because he had gone to a nearby congregation to preach, and we waited for him to come back so we could all have lunch together. When we went to Romania, there were no children anywhere, and so my lady began to ask the parents who were coming, where are your children? They're home. Because in the Orthodox Church, they're not interested in children. They want the adults because that's where the money is. So don't want to fool with children. My lady said, bring those children. Bring these children. And in 1996, she began with a lady from Ripley, Mississippi. Her first name was Doris. The 2 of them started children's Bible classes. The preacher's wife in Cluj, Romania, right now, was the first student to enroll in children's Bible class. So yes, we like to talk about tracts. We talk about sowing seed, like you mentioned, and that's true. But where our tracts have taken us all over the world, and when we see people like Juana and Marcel, they're walking in our tracks, and I'm standing on the shoulders of men like Carol Seitz and others that encourage me along the way.
Well, that's one of the reasons why I wanted to take you back to Harmon Junction because there are formative things that happen. Some are good, some are traumatic. We began really understanding what that fire is in us, what moved us.
Yeah.
And in your case, looking back, you can see the results of those beautiful people who now are living and doing and teaching their own children.
That's exactly right.
I did not know that about those old traditional churches. That blows my mind that they do not want to focus on teaching children.
They leave that up to the parents to bring those children up in the tradition that they've always had. In my opinion, the Orthodox thing is not really a religion, it's a tradition.
A tradition.
It's just passed down. They don't know why, it's just passed down. Here we come with our Bible. I can tell you, the first time I went, I was scared to death because I'd never heard of an Orthodox person, and 98% of the country was Orthodox. What kind of question are they going to ask me? Going to embarrass me? So after a while, here comes this young couple, sisters, ages 23 and 18.
Okay.
And I'm to study with them. And so we sit down and exchange quibbles, family stuff. Finally, I said, "Do you have any questions?" The younger of the two said, "Who is Jesus Christ?" I was thrilled when she asked that because I knew I can take my Bible and I can give her one. We can find out who Jesus Christ is. And we did. We studied probably a year, almost exactly a year, and both of them became Christians. The younger one passed away, and later their mother became a Christian. And so the older of the two and their mother both are still very faithful Christians. But I had never met anybody that needed to say, "Well, who is Jesus Christ?" Now, they had been in the Orthodox Church all their life, by tradition, but they didn't know Jesus. Many, many, many of them have never seen a Bible. We have given away tens of thousands of Bibles in these 31 years. Translated, we had them translated in the Romanian language. I have sit and watched a man 64 years old hold his Bible in his hand and cry and say, "I've never held a Bible before." Another man, 53, standing by the side of him doing the same thing. I was happy to know that here's some people that we need to start at the beginning. I wrote a series of lessons when I got back home that year to study, and we had it translated into Romanian language. Guess what the first lesson is? Who is Jesus Christ?
Who is Jesus? Okay. Just start that.
Tell the story of Jesus.
Tell the story. Brother Ted, you want to hear my Bible story?
Sure.
All right. I'm 12 years old, or somewhere in there. And the Gideons came through the school there and gave us Psalms, Proverbs, New Testament, King James Version.
Yeah, yeah.
And of course, I'd watched Billy Graham on TV, and I committed my life to Jesus. This is how God worked in my life, anyway, because these happened succinctly. Boom, boom. I really don't remember which one happened first, but I had this little Bible, and I'm reading it. I got a flashlight under the covers at night, so I didn't keep the light on and wake up my brother and sister, because we all have one bedroom,
Yeah.
And I'm reading that little fine print, King James Version, Psalms, Proverbs. Going to school, and I'm terrible at math. In fact, I'm dyslexic and I flunked the 4th grade. Got ridiculed. There's a test coming up, and I didn't want to take it. Joey Sterling said, just tell your mom you're sick. Stay home. Just tell her you're sick. Oh, I can do that. I can get out of this test. So the morning of the test, Mom, I'm sick. Mom, I'm sick. And Mom comes in, feels my head. Well, it doesn't feel like you got a fever. Oh, I'm sick. So my brother and sister walked up to the school bus stop to get on the bus. And as soon as it was too late for me to go, I felt the terror. That is absolute terror, because I knew I had gotten away with it. And I knew what sin was. And it was a lie. And I had just done it. And I came out and I started crying to my mother for her to take me to school. Because I wanted to undo it, you know. Of course, you can't undo sin. And she said, what is the matter with you? And crying, I said, God won't love me anymore. Little boy.
Yeah.
I knew what I had done. That was the first time I was aware of sin. And I knew what sin was because I'd read it in my little Bible. Of course, it took me years to figure out how to reconcile that, you know.
Mm-hmm.
That's what reading your Bible can do for you. That's why that picture of that old fellow finally looking at that thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And feeling such joy. I finally can understand the truth for myself.
That's amazing. I remember the night I was baptized, but I remember the day after more because it was in a gospel meeting and we were going to be there the next night. But the next morning when I went to school, everything that I thought and everything I did that day, I knew what I'd done the night before. And I did not want to mess it up.
Okay.
Because I guess I thought at that time, kind of like you did, if I mess up what I did, I'm just a goner, you know. And so I remember being, boy, so mindful of everything I did that next day. I didn't want to mess up what I'd done the night before.
Grace. Grace is such an amazing thing.
Yeah. But if we could get more people to think about, I don't want to mess up what I've just done until they at least learn about grace, maybe they'd be more faithful. Because a lot of people could have responded to my situation by saying, oops, I messed up. I may as well quit.
Quit.
And the same thing with you.
The devil's a good liar. And I ended up making many more significant mistakes, mess ups. And even to the point where the devil had me pretty much convinced that it was all over for you, son.
You're hopeless.
You're hopeless. And then I found a man who was willing to teach me the gospel, to really help me understand. I used the word reconciliation. That's a big word, but it is what the gospel does for us, and it reconciles us back to God.
And that's our ministry after we're reconciled.
So you asked me how I maintained, after encountering some of those things that I did that kind of set me back a little, that ministry of reconciliation. Because ultimately we individually answer to God. And once we receive that reconciliation, it's personal. I know who God is. I learned who Jesus is. And now I understand reconciliation. understand to some degree, what God went through for me to have that reconciliation. When you have that kind of affirmation, there isn't anything that can take that away.
That's right. We not only are reconciled ourselves, but we are ministers of reconciliation to the world, telling them, you need to be reconciled to God. And that's what keeps us going. That's what people ask me, why do you go to Romania? How much longer are you going to go to Romania? I don't know. I just know that there's 20-some million people over there that need to be reconciled to God. And the only way that can happen is for ministers of reconciliation to go over there and tell them. That's the only way. Can I tell you something?
Yes.
When I was there this last time, there were 4 generations of my family there. My son was there. His daughter was there. Her 2 daughters were there. So I was there with my son, my granddaughter, and 2 great-granddaughters. Marty is working full-time in Levy Mission Evangelism, and his wife. And so the work's going to continue for many years to come. So the message of reconciliation and the story of Jesus is going to continue to be taught after I'm resting.
What a joy.
It is. It's really.
Brother Ted, I want to thank you for taking this time with me.
Oh, I've loved it.
And I'll take this home and I'll whittle it down and we'll make it into probably a bunch of little shorts. We'll pop a few, bangers out on Facebook. And then I will do maybe the first of a series. We may have to come back and explore this some more.
Be glad to. Or I'll come up to your place and sit out into the trees like I saw you do with somebody the other day.
That'd be great. Well, if the good Lord gives us time, and the reason that I want to make these little videos here is to ultimately share that message of reconciliation, to help young people figure out that life has meaning, and that no matter how much the devil wants to convince you that you've screwed up and that it's hopeless, God has a better answer. And it's the answer of reconciliation.
And we see that in the book. We see that in the life of Paul and others. He was pretty hopeless.
Yeah.
But he was reconciled.
Who was Paul and what happened to him?
Yeah. That's a good story.
It is.
He was lost. He didn't know he was lost. He's out here determined that I'm going to wipe the influence of Jesus Christ from the face of the earth. If it takes murdering somebody to do that, bring it on. If it takes throwing men and women in prison, do it. And so he was committed to doing that. But he brought that same commitment after he was converted. He brought that same commitment to telling the story of Jesus. That got him killed, but we're still walking in his tracks.
Walking in his tracks.
That's exactly right. One time we had a little boy, just a little tyke, in children's Bible class in Oklahoma City.
Okay.
And after services, he was in the back seat. His grandparents, and they're going to go have lunch. And so his name was Bubba, of all things. And they said, Bubba, what did you learn in class today? He said, Jesus knocked Paul in the head with a flashlight.